This is Michael Martin, President and CEO of ECFA. It's my privilege to welcome you to today's webinar on creating an exceptional annual report. We are so honored to have three very good friends of ECFA as our special guest presenters. Dr. Gary Hogue, President and CEO of Global Trust Partners. And I'll abbreviate that, you'll often hear throughout the webinar, to GTP, Global Trust Partners. We also have Irene Monier, Vice President of Training and Empowerment of GTP, and also Ruthie Cristobal, Vice President of Partnership and Communications of GTP. I am very proud to say that GTP is an ECFA accredited member and is doing incredible work across the globe, very close to our heart, promoting the biblical principles of stewardship and peer accountability. Well, before we go much further today, let me open our time in a quick word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we're all gathered today over technology. I thank you for our good friends at Global Trust Partners and the investment that they're making, Lord, into our ministries today as we talk about this important topic of creating an exceptional annual report. God, I'm reminded today that we are first and foremost just stewards of all of the blessings that you've given to our ministries, and that, Lord, you also tell us, really instruct us in your word to give you praise and to tell the good stories, to tell of the miraculous works that you're doing. And so I thank you for just this time today as we all lean into those areas. Lord, help us become better stewards and also better storytellers of the great work that you're doing. We pray that you'd be honored in this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, just a few other quick housekeeping items, and then we'll jump right into the topic of the hour. First, each person desiring continuing education credit must be separately logged into the webinar today and answer all polling questions when they briefly appear on the screen, like the one you see now. In order to receive credit for attending the webinar today, please respond to these questions. If you have technical difficulties, please email your responses to the poll to the email address webinar@ecfa.org. Even though the polling questions are only required for continuing education credit, we'll appreciate everyone's participation. Lastly, our speakers and I are available to answer your questions all throughout today's webinar. You can ask your questions on the Questions tab that's located on the GoToWebinar controls, or you can simply email us at webinar@ecfa.org. We'll do our best to answer as many of your questions as possible. Well, with those important announcements behind us, I'm excited to now turn it over to today's presenters from GTP, Gary Hogue, Irene Monier, and Ruthie Cristobal. Take it away, my friends.
Thanks everyone for joining us today for a webinar for creating an exceptional annual report. We are so happy as a GTP team to join you for today. Let's start for the truth of how many organizations don't do annual report. Or maybe you don't like to do an annual report. This is sometimes the truth. But what discourages people from doing them? Beside the COVID, beside what happened post-COVID, that we are all overwhelmed from many tasks and we see that, we are busy. We can't add more tasks into our plate. But also there's when we pick up some annual reports, we feel it's stock image. It's in reality, and we cannot give more significance to this stock image. And then we go and we feel this is needs an outsourced and costly preparation. We are tight in our budget. We don't have budget to go and a printing house and printing materials. And once it's printed, we feel it's outdated. We look backward and we feel, it's wasting of time and energy. Why we need to do all this annual report? But what you can do to make an exceptional annual report? Start simple by using the real photos. Everyone has phone, and throughout the year, we get some pictures through the meetings, concert, and conferences. And from that, we feel that we have a real photos. People connected more for the real photos. And we go for the in-house and inexpensive one. We will help you today for using what you have in your material, what you have in your team, what you have to have an inexpensive annual report. and make it digital one, that it will be easy and accessible for everyone. And from there, this would be look forward to ask everyone to rally more people with you in the future. We like to connect people into a deeper way. So let's start by like what makes an exceptional annual report. There is four characteristics, and this is what we love to see on each annual report. This is purpose, program, partnership, and people. I will give you a brief, but then Gary will drill down on more details on each item. Celebrate your shared purpose. As GTP, we love to celebrate our purpose with everyone. This is to multiply faithful steward and mobilize peer accountability group like ECFA across the world. This is how we love to share our purpose with everyone. We don't like just to embrace it, but we like all our constituents to embrace it as well. Then we go for the second part of, yeah, let's go for like not just sharing the purpose, but also for our programs. How we need to go for our programs with others using the quantitative and qualitative measures. For the qualitative and quantitative measures, we like to share it with a status like infographics, like more and more resources and tools that will share your status, and also related to the qualitative measures for encouraging people to use impact stories. People connected more with impact stories. Share what you have, share more impact from your organization. And then we go for the partnership. We like to share with people of like what is the partnership, how we rally people with us, how we like to encourage everyone in our organization. It's not just we are taking like gift from the givers, but how we ask people to contribute with us. And by this time we go and mobilize people that God give us in each mission that we do. And last one is related to people. How we highlight people in our organization. It's not just about the CEO or the board members, it's about everyone. We like to communicate that each one matters. We like to say that each one play a role in their organization. So how you communicate and highlight your people, like board, like volunteers, like staff, like even the stakeholders that you work with them, like auditors and so on. So by this time, people connect that each one matter and they want to be engaged with you. Let's drill down more with Gary on understanding on each one of these characteristics.
Thanks, Irene. It's so great to be with you all. Let's dig deeper into these four ingredients, which come together to make a great annual report. For each one, I'll give you an example from an exceptional annual report, and please know that we'll share these samples with you after the webinar. First, the first ingredient of an exceptional annual report is purpose. State your purpose plainly. It's what you do that is your mission and why you do it. I love the example of AFCA. AFCA is the African Council for Accreditation and Accountability, the partner peer accountability group to ECFA in Kenya, serving Pan Africa. In their annual report, they clearly state their purpose, what they do, and why they do it, and they invite others to share their purpose. They also, on subsequent pages, highlight the growth of the community that shares their purpose and feature pictures of volunteers and other key workers that help with their accreditation efforts and processes. And they share how readers can join them in their purpose and get accredited. So it becomes an amazing tool for them throughout the year. So make sure in your annual report that your purpose is clear, that you show who's engaged with you, and that you invite others to join you. Let's move to the second ingredient of an exceptional annual report, and that is programs. State your programs plainly. That is specifically how you pursue your purpose. In this section, you want to highlight faithful activities and fruits. Now, faithful activities is a common phrase we use at GTP to describe your diligent work in measurable ways. And the fruits are the outcomes that God gives you as a result of that faithful work. When we share them in this way, God gets the glory. Now, I love the example of Christian Super in Australia. They have 8 programs: alleviating disadvantage in Australia, sustainability efforts, empowering livelihoods of the less fortunate with a living wage, renewable energy, financial inclusion, education, spiritual impact, and healthcare. Now, you might say those are big areas, and the ministry you serve might be working in big areas. So, what should you do? With each one of your programs, have a spread in your annual report that explains the program and has stats or numbers with infographics that show quantitative impact, but then couple it with stories that reflect qualitative impact. These stories can drive people to your website to learn more. Now, at GTP, we call the mini impact stories that we put in our annual report, which can be shared in maybe 200 or 250 words, as mini impact stories. And longer ones we call impact stories are maybe 750 or 1,000 words, and they're best put on the website. Now, what's an outline for a mini or a long impact story? It's really simple: before, during, and after. In other words, what was the situation before engagement with your program? During, how did the people in the story engage with your program? And then after, what was the impact of your program in their lives or in their situation? The key here is to share with readers the impact of the program in a way that invites them to engage with you in deeper ways. Now, remember, your programs illustrate how you pursue your purpose. And if you do this well, people will join you as the work you do is part of God's work, and it's inviting. Let's go to the third ingredient of an exceptional annual report, and that is partnership. Let me say at the outset that partnership is a biblical word. In Philippians 1:5, Paul expressed thanks to the Philippians for their partnership in the gospel. The Greek word here is koinonia. It means participation in God's work with what we have. So, partnership is about how you engage people with what they have. They have gifts, they have abilities, they have energy, they have money. Again, you want to highlight faithful activities and fruits in your infographics. Now, here I want to give you an example from the Philippines. CCT is the Center for Community Transformation. It's the largest indigenous group of ministries in the Philippines. They're accredited by CCTA, which is the partner to ECFA in the Philippines. And this ministry, Visions of Hope, is part of CCT Ministries. Visions of Hope sees every child as a vision of hope, to pour the love of Jesus and care into each child they serve. So their annual report talks about their programs, and it talks about these poor children who are often without hope. But in their annual report, we see partnership because they share how people can give, share, serve, and pray. And they're really specific. They also have this page in their annual report where readers can make a purchase that gives hope. Now, before I move on to the last point, let me elaborate on what it means that partnership is reporting on communications, prayer, and transparency. Communications is teaching people when you've got their attention, they're reading your annual report, how to get information from you. Show them in your annual report to look for it monthly or bi-monthly in your regular email. Maybe invite them to connect with you on social media channels. Teach them where they can get prayer requests or how they can join you in prayer meetings, and even show them their financials so they can see the impact of your partnership. And this leads to sharing how sustainability links partnership to program. Let me explain. Don't tell people that you spend every dollar that comes in on program, because then they'll know you'll be unsustainable. Show them how their partnership is helping you build capacity for ongoing sustainability. How do you do this? You can show like an infographic that shows your funding model. This again invites people to partner with you in an ongoing way. Let's move to the fourth and final ingredient of an exceptional annual report, and that is people. Board members, staff, volunteers. Perhaps give a sentence or two to be sure to show ways these groups of people serve, and this will invite the service of others. Be sure also to report from auditors and accreditors as appropriate. Now, you want to show people these are your financials. They've been verified by an independent third party auditor and accredited by ECFA. And for more complex organizations, you want to share how networks and groups collaborate. As CEO, I've interacted with lots of organizations that say, wow, we're really complex in how we're structured. So often, the best way to show people how you work is to have an organogram. Now, an org chart is something you're probably familiar with, shows how people are connected in an organization. An organogram shows how departments and networks and partners collaborate. Now, many ministries in modern times function in partnerships, and their relationships are complex, so possibly put them on a chart. Diakony, Catastrophe, and Hilfe of Germany shows you on this sample how networks engage with each other. When you get the sample annual reports, this might be something you want to imitate. These are groups of people showing how they work together. Remember, Jesus said the harvest was plentiful and the workers are few, and to pray for workers. Well, workers are people. If you state your purpose, sketch your programs, invite partnership, and show how people are involved, you're going to do well to engage others with you. At this point, you maybe want to start building your own annual report. Well, Ruthie is here to help you do just that.
First of all, thanks, Irene, for helping us remove all the mental obstacles and reminding us that we can do a really great forward looking annual report with real photos that don't necessarily have to cost a lot because it can be done in house and be shared digitally. And thanks, Gary, for elaborating on the four P's or the four key ingredients of an exceptional annual report: the purpose, the programs, the partnership, and the people. Now let's answer the how question and dive straight into production. It all starts with deciding on the content of your annual report. How do you do that? Map out a storyboard. Now, you may have heard of a storyboard within the context of films or animated films, but for our purpose, it provides you with a visual outline or a narrative of the story that you want to tell with your annual report. Think of it as an architectural frame that provides structure for your report. For our most recent annual report, it had 25 pages. So, what we did was we mapped out these 25 pages and sketched what would go on each one. You'll notice that it starts with a front cover, followed by the president's letter, then the organization's purpose, and then an overview of the program and partnership statistics. After that, we actually dive into the programs. At GTP, we have four: teaching, training, teamwork, and toolbox. You'll notice that for each of them, we have one, a narrative page that discusses what happened to that program last year, and two, another page with excerpts from an impact story or other related information such as collaborators, program feedback, and so on. After that, we share and we celebrate the fruits of our partnership efforts. Here, we can talk about what's going on with prayer and our different communication channels, and even our financials, as Gary mentioned, as this is another way that people partner with us. For this part, we really only include two pages: one page with our revenue and expenses, and another page with our financial position. And this is also where we put the ECFA seal. And then we celebrate the people that breathe life into the organization. And Gary already mentioned some of these. Irene already mentioned some of these. They are the board, the staff, and the key volunteers, which for GTP are called regional facilitators. And then finally, we look into the future. As Irene mentioned earlier, it's really good for an annual report to not just look to the past, but to also give a glimpse on where you're heading. You know why? This is why. This gets people excited on how they can get involved with your organization. And then, of course, you end with a back cover. All right, so now you already have the storyboard. What's next? The next thing you have to do is decide on the theme of the annual report. In other words, What story do you want to tell? What problem do you solve? What area does God have you working in right now in the geography of the kingdom? On the slide in front of you, you'll notice this picture with rows and rows of plants in a coffee plantation. Gary took this photo in Guatemala where he learned that every time a coffee bean is picked, there are two seeds in it, one to roast and make coffee, and another to sow. Now, in these tiny coffee beans, he learned the secret to sustainability. He learned that if you don't sow the seeds, soon the existing plants will cease to be fruitful and the plantation wouldn't flourish with sustainability. And so, what this one image does is that it illustrates the idea that as God provides, we shouldn't use up all that we receive in program work, but instead, we ought to use a portion of it to grow partnership. And so, the secret to sustainability is just that: use a portion. And you know what? This image became the overarching message and theme of our 2021 annual report. That image eventually became our cover letter, and the lessons that Gary learned made their way into his president's letter. All right, now you have the theme, you also have the table of contents. It's time to collect the different components of the annual report. Going back to our architectural analogy, it's time to assemble, say, the tiles for the floor or the wooden brick for the walls and so on. So you'd want to collect things like Bible verses and celebrations of God's goodness. For instance, here we use Leviticus 26:9 to accompany our program statistics. Speaking of which, you'll notice that as we talked about our four programs, teaching, training, teamwork, and toolbox, we gave year over year information on things like how many students were taught and trained, how many countries were reached, how many downloads our digital resources got, and so on. And this showed that that was up from the numbers in the prior year. So with one page, with just some simple icons, you get to show the quantitative growth of your organization's programs. Another thing you can collect are pictures, photographs of real people you've served, screenshots of your Zoom events, images of different events that you had during the year, and then accompany these with snippets of either qualitative feedback or stories of impact. Here, for example, we have a narrative of what went on with our training program. And on the page after that, we had an excerpt from an impact story. It's from a pastor who attended one of our webinars on succession planning. And a while ago, Gary already shared how many words you can have for the excerpt and how many words you can have for the fuller impact story. And you know what's cool about this is that it has a link to the fuller story on the website. And that's really the beauty of having a digital annual report. You can embed links in the PDF that can drive people, that can drive traffic to your website or your social media. Another thing you should collect are highlights of the year and updates on your program and partnership efforts. For example, on this page, we highlighted the growth of our constituency in the communications area. We shared things like how our global network list grew, how people opened and clicked through journal entry, which is our main email communication, how we launched our Spanish newsletter for our Latin American audience, and how people engaged with us on social media. So, what are your communication channels? For you, it might include things like information on your website, your digital newsletter, social media, and so on. Highlights and updates like these are important because they help people understand the different channels that they can dial in on. And it also enables them to be a part of helping you grow those channels. Now we come to the financials. Make sure that you collect these financial statements from your work with your independent auditors. As I said earlier, on one page, you'd want to show your revenues and expenses. And on another page, you'd want to give a snapshot of your assets and liabilities, such as this one that you see on your screen. This gives people a sense of your year over year growth and simply tells them, hey, the organization is growing in fiscal stability. Here you can also show the logo of your auditors, as well as the logo from ECFA, showing your peer accountability accreditation that verifies your compliance with ECFA standards. Now, if people want a copy of your financial review or your audited financial statements, you can make them available upon written request. And then you should also collect one of the most important parts of your annual report. information and photos about the people, the brains, the hearts, the hands and feet that make things happen. You can share these photos of your board, staff, and volunteers, but make sure to present them in a consistent way. And what this does is that it celebrates them and lets people know who are involved in your organization. And we mentioned earlier that the annual report doesn't just look backward, it also looks forward. So share your future plans. Readers may think, are so many wonderful things are happening. I wonder what's in store for this organization in the future. In just a few lines, you can give them a glimpse of the direction you're heading and lets them know what to pray for and how they can engage with you. All right, now that you've collected all of these things, it's time to put them together. You already have a storyboard prepared, so now it's really on to deciding what text, what image, which numbers, what visual information goes where. This is an iterative design process that takes into account your branding standards. And this also involves your organization's colors, fonts, and overall look, aside from the theme that you set in the beginning. For this part, you may turn to design programs like Adobe InDesign or Corel Draw Graphics Suite, which are great, but those may require some level of proficiency. So we have this tip for you. At GTP, we use something called Canva. It's really easy to use and even has pre-built templates that you can use. And what we also love about this is its collaborative nature. You can share the file you're working on with the team involved, and you can work consecutively in putting in the different components of the annual report. All right. Lastly, before you share your annual report to your stakeholders and constituents, you got to be sure you proofread it. Based on our experience, multiple eyes looking at it, checking for things like typos, inconsistencies, broken links, misplaced photos, inaccurate numbers, and the like, help turn your good annual report into an exceptional annual report. So make sure that you have various team members who are knowledgeable in your programs to review it for accuracy. So, in summary, create an exceptional annual report by drafting a storyboard, deciding on a theme, collecting the different components, putting them together in a program like Canva, and proofreading to make sure that everything is accurate. Now let's go back to Irini, who will share with us why God's workers, like you, like me, should prepare annual reports.
You must be excited now about like how to create your annual report. You might start to think of more practical, like to connect the puzzle pieces of your organization to have your own exceptional annual report. And you might think of like, yeah, it's work. It's work to create, and it's not easy. So why should God's worker prepare an annual report that it has a wonderful tool for engaging more people into your mission? 5 reasons God's workers should use annual reports that illustrate faithful activities and fruits. At GTP, I learned that since day one when I joined GTP. I was working at the bank for like many years, so all my mindset was like about numbers, production driven, like results-based management. And then when I started to read The Choice, it's one of ECFA press books. It started to talk about, the Christ-centered pursuit of kingdom outcome. It started to understand of the faithful activities. What is the faithful activities that we need to do to follow kingdom path? And this is why we want to start by follow biblical pattern. This is not GTP pattern. This is not ECFA. This is God's pattern. God's worker do faithful work. God supplies the fruit, and sharing the news encourage people. This pattern glorifies God. The best scripture that illustrates this idea is in Act 2, 42 to 47. When you read, they devoted themselves into apostle teaching, fellowship, breaking the bread, and prayers. And then they gathered daily to eat together, to pray together, like to serve together. And by this time, in verse 47, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. The Lord added their number. The Lord add the fruits. So if you want to follow biblical pattern, Start to create your own exceptional annual report. Do the faithful activities day by day, and then you will collect the amazing pieces of an annual report. Second reason of strengthen governance. An annual report helps the board hold staff accountable to stay on track, and it serves as a tool for them to engage others to join them. We ask board to give us a right oversight to stay on track, and this is amazing. But imagine that is like you're asking your board to give you an oversight, but they don't give them like a right report of what you're supposed to do. By giving them the right annual report, you show them this is what we do and this is what we're supposed to do. You show them and illustrate by stories and numbers and more sharing of what you did throughout the year. So they are engaged with you. And if you share the annual report with them, like let's say PDF, so they are engaged with you when they meet others, they will speak about your organization. In our service, we meet like a lot of board members. They say, we are not really engaged. But we saw the difference when you are a board member, you are engaged with the mission and the purpose, and you want to share the purpose with everyone. Give them the right tool that they will be engaged with you. Third reason is increase confidence. You want to increase the confidence. You want to go and increase the transparency. We encourage God's worker to have an annual report to increase transparency. This grows trust among constituents and grow participation. How we want to do that? We want, if we promise our partner that this is the program that we want to do, this is the job that God asking us to do for the ministry, they want to see that we delivered our promise. They want to see what we did, what we do, and what we delivered, how we served people. Think about it. Each time you give even $1 for a one ministry, you will be happy to see the impact. You will be happy to see an impact stories, to connect the dots. And it's more about they called you and to serve with them. Imagine that you're not just getting a gift, but you show how you are trustworthy. You're connecting and mobilize people to serve with you. And you show people that you are like trustworthy for each gift and each giver that you have. Number 4 is mobilize assistance. As church and ministries have needs on an annual basis, annual reports rally timely help. As we shared with you, this is not just about the past, our purpose. This is not just about the present of like our program and what we do and what is our current position in the finance and budgets. It's more also about the future, how we have more programs in the future. And we want you as a partner. We want you as a board member, as a reader of our annual report to engage with us, to help us. This is not just about our job. It's God's job. And we want you to be with us. Number 5 is to ensure sustainability. With annual reporting, it makes sure that people stay involved. Money doesn't sustain ministry, but people do. Use what you have and engage people. We think that money makes ministry happen, but people does. And what we mean by people does, it's all of us. Each one matter, and how we can contribute to make it happen for God's kingdom. Ensure that you have the right sustainability. If you want to have sustainable ministry that stay long years, get more people into it. Don't just control or don't just be like centralized for what you do. Even you are amazing person. We are blessed everyone here. But we pray that you engage more people into your organization. I want to share with you a one testimony. We have many, but we love to share with you a one testimony from Guatemala. This is one of my favorite places that I have visited 2 years ago. And they were like amazing, sharing their faithful activities. It's called Potter's House. And Gary started to help them in their annual report since 2012. They started to think, okay, what is that, like how we can roll out like our marketing campaign, our marketing message, how we need to do an annual report that rally more people. They started to think about their purpose and how God is calling them to serve the poor. They searched for a scripture and then They landed on like, we care about the poor because God's care. This is the theme of their annual report. They communicated the message for everyone. But this is not just because this is their message. They connected people to God. When you connect people to God, it's more important than your organization. And by this time, they engage people on mission. It's not just about their stuff, but they engage people who are rallied, like more in their organization, and serve those in needs. When I traveled, I was eager to serve with them. I actually connected what I read in their annual reports, in their website, for what I see. I actually asked Gary, can you take me more and more for visits for serving those kids? There is a life there. This organization will be more sustainable because they serve God. Is this the case for your organization? This is the why. We ask you why you need to do an exceptional annual report because it's God's pattern, it's not our pattern, because it strengthens your governance, because it's increased the confidence with all your partners and mobilize assistance and ensure sustainability for everyone. Let's go with Ruthie.
All right. By now, you already know the key ingredients of a good annual report, which are the purpose, programs, partnership, and people. And you also have an idea how to build an annual report. Remember, you start with a storyboard and a theme, collect and assemble the different components, and end with proofreading for accuracy. And now you also know why we need to prepare annual reports. So you may be wondering at this juncture, who does all of these things? Now I want to talk about the team or the people who will collaborate on this project. Let's talk about who contributes what parts. The theme, the letter, and the overall vision really comes from the executive director or CEO. Because the ED or the CEO has oversight on things that are happening both in the program side and in the partnership side. They have a sense of what the theme should be and what should emerge in those different pieces. Then comes the chief communications officer. Now, in your organization, this role might be called differently, but regardless of what this position is called, this person really focuses on how all of these ideas are presented. That includes the design, the layout, how it's going to match your identity standards, how it's going to reflect and have a consistent look with your website and the other things that you do. The chief communications officer can also act as the project manager for this project. Now, when it comes to content, things like program statistics and impact stories, this is where the chief program officer and your administrator come in. This is where they contribute. They are the ones who are gathering data, keeping track of information, and monitoring your programs throughout the year. So when the fiscal year is over, you don't have to go and scramble and look for all these things, look for the stats and the stories, because what you've actually done is you've gathered them throughout the year. And then finally, you have the CFO or the Chief Financial Officer. And this person is the one who provides the financial data, which may be coming from your independent auditors. And remember, you're not putting an entire set of financials that you get from your auditors. You're really just giving a snapshot to show that year over year, the organization's fiscal strength have been growing. Now, of course, you might engage other team members based on how big or how small your organization is. But for our lean team at GTP, this is how we do it. This is how different team members contribute to the different parts. As I mentioned earlier, we use a collaborative space called Canva to work on our annual report. What you see here on your screen right now is a screenshot of our dashboard from Canva. And you can see that this is the project that we worked on last year, the 2021 annual report. And as you can see, we have other projects we were simultaneously working on at that time. Now, on the next screenshot, you'll notice that as we were working on the annual report, we can share this design to others. So, for example, I might share it with Gary and ask him to provide copy or to review certain pages. Or I might share it with Irene and ask her, hey, is there an interesting story we can put here? Or are the stats correct? Think of it as looking at the same PowerPoint or the same keynote slides. Now, if you can navigate through those programs, you should be able to figure out Canva fairly quickly, which is great as there is little to no barrier using it. So there you go. These are the people who work together so that you can create an exceptional annual report. On to Gary to land the plane. and share with us what may happen if we share this annual report to others.
Thanks, Ruthie, and thanks, Irene. Thanks for helping me with this webinar today and really helping with the creation of our annual reports at GTP. I want to conclude with the question, what if you did? What if you prepared and shared your annual report? What I want to say to those of you who are listening is many of you might be at this place where you're saying, our organization is like 5 years old and we worked hard and we got ECFA accredited. We've never done an annual report. Or maybe we're 3 years old or 7 years old. Well, guess what? The time to do one is right now. People love a great story. In our first annual report, which is illustrated here, it included more than one fiscal year. And that's okay because we kind of told the story in pictures and narrative from our formation until and including this first year. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't know if we can do this or we started too late, the answer is the time is now to do it. Tell a great story with pictures and infographics and do it in a way that God gets the glory. And when you do this, people love it. They love to engage with you. And what I found is really significant is your organization, say, might be 3 years old, and someone might have joined your community at the 2.5 year mark. When they read your annual report, it's like they get up to speed and they know everything that's happened. And so a lot of times when we meet people, we want them to know the past, but maybe it's awkward to explain it all to them over a coffee or whatever. Well, if you put it in your annual report, you can bring them up to speed and get everyone on the same page with what God is doing, showing them how people can pray, how they can help, and be involved in an ongoing way. Well, at this point, we want to conclude with the reality that we want to give you the samples that you've seen today. In other words, we're going to send you a follow-up email from this webinar that gives you links to download these sample annual reports. Oftentimes, when you look at a sample, you'll grab an idea from this one, an idea from that one, and you'll create your own exceptional annual report. You'll also get the slide deck as well as the webinar recording because we realize you might want to go over this with your team, build your storyboard, and build your exceptional annual report. And we want to give you access to future free resources because we at GTP don't want to just help you build an exceptional annual report. We want to help you with other facets of governance and administration so that what you do and how you do it brings honor to God and engages God's people with you. And so when you receive follow-up emails, we hope that you take advantage of the free resources GTP offers because we want you to know we're with you as you embark in God's work. And we want to help you be efficient, effective, and do it in a way that honors and glorifies God as faithful stewards and as part of local peer accountability groups like ECFA. It's a privilege to be with you today and to talk about how to create an exceptional annual report.
All right. Well, Gary, Ruthie, and Irene, I'll just say I'm going to borrow from a word that we use for the title of this webinar, which was exceptional. We were talking about creating an exceptional annual report. The three of you have done an exceptional job really helping us unpack this from, gosh, I think so many different levels, like biblically, practically, so many of the questions that I'm sure were already on people's minds coming into this webinar. So thank you for the exceptional job that you've done. Gary, I know you're a baseball fan. I'm going to say you hit a home run. But yet I know that there's still probably some questions that are out there. So I do want to encourage, before we let you go, we're going to take some time just to be able to dialogue a little bit and to continue along with some questions. And the good news is everybody who's listening today, you can submit your questions. Gary, Ruthie, and Irene, myself will be here to help answer some of those as they come in. Use the questions tab where you can send them from or to the address webinar@ecfa.org. And as those questions come in, I think, Gary, one of the questions that I was curious about just in hearing you share is from the CEO standpoint. You work with a lot of leaders, God's workers across the globe. And so tell us a little bit, as you've seen this annual report concept being used. Speak to the top leaders and the top servants of organizations who are listening today. How is this annual report really helpful from that seat?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. One of the biggest things I've found, Michael, is that you do all this work and you create an exceptional annual report. And you know what assumption that you make? You assume that people actually read it. Okay. And so what I've found is that when I'm interacting with people at like a coffee or a lunch, what I've found is that I actually open up my laptop, or for those of you who have an iPad, open your iPad and go to a page or two while you're together with them. You know what I've found? Generally it piques their interest and they say, wow, I missed that when it came. And so you can illustrate something you're talking about over lunch. And then they generally say to me, hey, can you email me that, or can you message it to me so that I can look at that more closely? And then they've even said, can I share it with others? Which of course I say, absolutely. So I want to encourage you as CEOs to don't make the assumption that people have actually read it, but instead, when you finish your annual report, have it ready as a tool when you interact personally with others. It's going to come back and help you remarkably throughout the year.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, I want to just ask a couple of questions to piggyback off of what you just said, Gary. And I think it was Irene, as you were mentioning during the presentation too, that one of the great things you can do is actually engage from a governance standpoint. You can engage the board. This puts a tool, right, that's in their hands to be able to share as they're talking about the ministry with people that are in their area of influence and so on. So maybe either Gary or Irene, whichever one or both, tell us a little bit for the CEOs that are out there. How do you put this in the hands of your boards and really help equip them to be the good news bearers for your organization?
How about we do this? How about I'll share how we put it in their hands and she can share about the transformational impact that happens.
Perfect. Yeah.
As soon as we finish our annual report, it goes out in our fortnightly or our every 2 week newsletter to our constituents. But I, as CEO, personally send an email to the board members alerting them to the fact that here it is, here's where you download it, and these are some practical talking points you can use as a board member as you share it with others. They love those talking points because it helps them process and synthesize ways they can start sharing it without having to maybe think them up themselves, but they undoubtedly think of others. I'll let Irene share about the impact that it has.
Maybe Gary decided that I choose about, like, I talk about transformation because I always, if I didn't see the transformation in what we do, then it's useless. So what we see is the real transformation when you use this tool for, I can say, unity, community, and celebration. Unity for not just with the board, but for the staff, for the volunteers. It builds the community. It also builds like everyone that contribute. It's just when Ruthie shared about the how and who can make it, it helps us to work together. And when we share it with the board, it helps the community to grow. They are engaged with us more. And it gives the last piece of celebration. Like I love celebration always. So when we need to stop ourselves and think and process what the Lord gave us through this year and celebrate and see the fruits, so we can celebrate and have the energy, like the energy level for the organization, it moves starting from the staff, volunteers, and also the board.
Good, good. Very helpful, both of you. And then another question to piggybacking again, Gary, off something you said, and maybe this is one Ruthie could chime in on too, perhaps, but you mentioned, my question is about timing. And so you obviously really want to leverage that annual report right whenever it comes out, and there's different ways that you do that. But also, how long throughout the year? How long can we put all this work into creating the annual report. So are there other times that we can utilize it besides when it just first comes out? Like, how do you continue to leverage that throughout the year?
Sure. I think what I'll do is I'll answer first from the CEO's perspective, and then Ruthie can comment on the detail. First, um, as an organization that has quarterly board meetings, we're I'm working closely with Irene and our global administrator to make sure that our stats and numbers are kept for those quarterly board meetings. So we don't have to do a lot of work when it comes time to build the annual report to piece it together. And once we have the annual report, we can think of a number of ways we can utilize it. One is in our communications, another is in our, let's say, our partnership or our fundraising efforts. And again, remember I said we make the assumption people read it. Don't make that assumption. Use it throughout the year as a living document. Because it has that future piece to it, you can give people regular updates on what's happening in those future areas. That's just a snippet on that on your question. I'll let Ruthie comment further.
Thanks for that question. I'd say you can really use your annual report throughout the entire year, not just when it comes out.
Mm.
So for us, we upload it to our website so that it can be accessible anytime, anywhere by anyone. Make it really visible in your website. Another thing you can do, post it on your social media. So if people engage with you that way, they have another channel they can look at your annual report. And then bring it out when you do, let's say, calendar year end campaigns or fiscal year end campaigns, if those are two different times in the year. Because what it really shows is your story, right? So you can use it not just the week or the month after you do it, but throughout the entire year.
Good, good. No, I echo that. And Ruthie, another timing question. This one's for you. And I think you all made a great points throughout the webinar about why, why we should be doing this work. But I know one of those questions that might be in the back of the minds of those who maybe they haven't done an annual report or they haven't done it consistently, and that's wow, we have so much ministry, we have all these other things happening. How much time is this going to take
Yeah.
for us pull this off? Like, speak to that. How much? I know it varies, I'm sure, depending on organization, but what's a good ballpark in terms of the amount of time that it should take?
Well, I can speak about the GTP experience, and we really did our annual report in about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a month tops. But what really happens is that, as Gary said, you gather all of the information throughout the year. And in those 2 weeks, it's really just putting it together. So make sure that as soon as your year starts, you're already tracking stats, you're already gathering stories. And then once you have at the end of the year your financials from your auditors, it's really just putting it together. Yeah, so I suggest that, aside from the stats and the stories, look for the pictures already. Start writing the narratives once it's done so you don't forget. And it's just a matter of collecting everything and assembling it together.
Good tips. Gary, and maybe Irene, this one for you. I think there was mention during the presentation a couple different times about the importance, I love this, of not just reporting on the past, but really using this as a tool for the leader and the team to cast vision for what's coming next in the next season. Can you tell us about the balance of like how much detail do we go into about different vision pieces or things that may be coming in the future? How do we balance the right amount of that with also reporting on the things that took place in the past, thinking about transformation that would come?
Sure, I'll take a crack at that and then let Irene also respond after me. You'll notice that when we delivered the slides today, Ruthie shared that in one page, she shared year over year progress with infographics of program, one page. So the balance is we also do then one page, which just focuses on a few words, and you can see this in our sample, a few words of what we anticipate moving forward in our programs. And I say this to CEOs to be really careful. An annual report simply says we make and keep our promises. And so you don't declare things into the future that are something you can't deliver. In other words, just put in there what you can see and the faithful work you anticipate as you look to the future. Raina, is there anything else you think you'd add to this?
My mind just went for the quarterly reports, and then the infographics of some parts is really essential that we connect the mission, the purpose, and from there the prayers, and we put like one main part of this is the program, what we do, and this is related to the partnership, but also this is the prayers, what we need to pray for. And when you put the prayers in your annual report, when you put the prayers in some reporting, that it will help people to be connected in the future, not just like in the past, not just in the present of this is your financial position, but also for the future.
Good. Very good. Well, we're coming up on the time where I think we have time for just one more question. So, Gary, I'm going to pack two into one. How does that sound? One would be just any last words, as you think about presidents and CEOs in terms of this topic with annual reports, but also in the spirit of you and the team from GTP. This has been such a blessing to be able to hear from you today. I do know there's many who are listening on the line today that there's a US based ministry, but there's also work that's happening internationally, or they may have sister organizations that are doing work across the globe. So be sure to also tell us how they can plug into the great work at GTP. So there you go, my two-part question into one.
Sure. Okay. Well, as a last word, I'm going to tell you a story, because those of you who are listening, you may not be the CEO or the president. So you may not be like that decision maker who can say, let's do an annual report. So this story is for you. It was in the late 90s. I was a director at a large Christian university that was ECFA accredited. And I was responsible to raise about $1.5 million a year for the annual fund. But we did not do an annual report. Imagine this. You're the director of the annual fund and there's no annual report. I'm thinking we need an annual report. And as Irene shared those reasons people don't do it, these were the reasons that people shared with me, or similar things. And so I said, can I talk to our printer? And can I ask them to maybe do this job pro bono or do this job for free? So the truth is, we did our first ever annual report. And let me tell you what happened. A giver who'd never sent a major gift sent us a check for $10,000. And you know what he wrote in his letter? He wrote, I'm sending this gift because that was a great annual report. And I showed it to the president. He was like, wow, this really can make a difference in helping us advance the mission. And so I want to encourage you, if you're not the president and CEO, share the story with them to remind them that it can have a huge impact on people who are reading it, who maybe haven't been very engaged with you, and it can increase their engagement because of the confidence it gave. And then I suppose the second half of your question, I'll just say, if you go to gtp.org, you can find a lot of resources to take advantage of that we've put there to help the ministry where you serve, and if you're working internationally, to help the partners you work with around the world grow as faithful stewards and connect with the peer accountability movements happening in their countries. And also just remember, you're going to receive emails from us every couple weeks. We hope you stay subscribed, and we hope you take advantage of the free resources we offer as a result of participating in today's webinar. It's a privilege to serve with you.
Yes. No, thank you so much. And again, just as a reminder, all those samples, all of the great resources from today will be in that follow-up email. And I do pray that our listeners plug into the great work that's happening with GTP. So thank you so much. And for all those listening, we have just a couple more important announcements as we begin to wrap up today's webinar. First of all, I always want to take the opportunity when I can just to say a very sincere thank you to many of our over 2,600 ECFA accredited members who are represented on today's webinar. And then for other friends who are also with us today, now is a great time to take the next step in becoming ECFA accredited. This accreditation will not only help your ministry achieve high standards of financial integrity, but also demonstrate that commitment to accountability to your givers in a watching world. Next, I'd like to invite you to join our next free webinar on July the 25th that's titled The New Faces of Church Planting and Multi-Siting. ECFA's own Dr. Warren Bird and special guest Pastor Michael Carrion will be discussing the results from ECFA's latest and groundbreaking church plant survey. Join us as they discuss practical insights and trend predictions from over 3,000 church planners and campus pastors who responded to our survey. You can learn more and register for free at ecfa.org/events. Well, the time has gone quickly, and that brings us to the end of our webinar today on creating an exceptional annual report. We trust this has been meaningful to you. You'll be receiving again another email with a link to the recording and the related materials. Once again, I'd like to thank Gary Hogue, Irene Monier, and Ruthie Cristobal for their outstanding presentation and insights, and for each person who joined us today for this webinar. God bless you in your ministry, and thanks again for tuning in.